Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, hello and welcome to the Casual Pros Podcast. My name is Rukari, and today, for episode 6, I'm interviewing Jeff Easterling, who it sounds hilarious because we've been talking to each other the whole time. And technically, you just interviewed me, so I'm going to return the favor.
Oh, no.
We're going to find out any and everything about Jeff. No holds barred. That's a lie because there's lots of shit that I won't talk
It's true.
that he'll look at me. You guys, for those of you watching, you'll see him do this. Mm-hmm. And if he slow blinks like that, you know I've
pulled the Jim Halpert look at the.
I have gone too far. So yeah, this episode is all about Jeff, we shall say. And I guess
a skippable one.
Introduce us, Grim Brother One. Who are you and where are you from?
Originally from Tampa, Florida. So native Floridian. We mentioned it last time. So you're native Seattle, native Floridian. Both, I think, especially nowadays, people feel like they don't hear that a lot.
Yeah, not up here.
Yeah,
not in this corner of the country.
Like, and I think Seattle and Tampa are like number 1 and number 2 for like crazy like housing boom and people moving into like the city and the area and stuff like that. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, born and raised in Florida. My parents were super young when they had me, like 16 and 20, 17 and 20, something like that. It was,
okay.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So I'm very thankful for my parents deciding to go through with that.
Appreciate y'all.
Touch and go, yeah. I'm even more impressed that they kept having kids.
Yeah, so you say that. So
afterwards,
how large is the family?
So we in total with my mom and dad, we have there's 5 of us. So I'm the oldest of 5. I had 2 younger siblings that didn't make it. But all. Right now,
I never knew that it was 2 younger.
Yeah,
I knew it was one. The first sister.
My first sister passed shortly after birth, and then my mom miscarried another one. So there would have been 7.
Gotcha.
Which is pretty crazy. Which would have been awesome. I absolutely love my siblings. They're some of my absolute best friends in the world. But yeah, the oldest of 5, 4 boys, and then the girl. So I think they're just like, okay, we just got to get the girl. Okay,
got to get the girl. Came out last.
All good. But no, they're and they keep getting cooler, man.
What are the names?
So next one down is Luke. He's the next youngest, and then it's Trevor, and then Matt, and then Rose. And there's like 5 years between me and Luke, 5 years between Luke and Trevor, and then 2 years each between Trevor and Matt and Rose. So 14 total.
They were like, keep setting up the dice. We got to knock this one out. We don't have another 5, 5, 5.
We can't
do this. We can't do this. And everybody is born and raised in Tampa, right? And are any of them still there?
Yeah, actually, all of them are still there. So my brother,
you're the defector.
Luke. I'm the black sheep that flew away. But I wasn't the first one to move away. Actually, Luke played. He was a really great high school quarterback, and he went and played a little bit of college ball at Kentucky Christian University for a season. So he and his now wife actually moved away for, I guess it was about a year, and then moved back when they had their first.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
And they're still in Florida. I'm happy to say that they've all come up to Seattle at one point or another, right?
That's true.
Each and every single one of them.
Matt, he hasn't come up since I moved, but he came up first. He was actually with me the first time I visited and kind of fell in love with the city. So,
what'd you think the first time you ever came to Seattle?
Oh, I just loved it. I mean, first of all, the fact that you can sit in grass.
Can you not sit in grass in Florida?
You can't. It's terrible. It's crunchy and stiff and itchy. It's so hard to describe. Floridians will understand what I'm talking about. But I remember us sitting in one of the little parks somewhere near Pike and just thinking, like, the grass, it feels damp, but it's not. It's soft and it's
supple.
Cold. It's like you could lay down on it. Also, no fire ants here because it's too cold. So Florida is basically America's Australia. It's just everything wants to kill you. Mm-hmm. Like the grass is itchy. I
almost made a Zimmerman joke.
Oh my God! It's a rough town. It's a rough place. Alligators working toll booths.
Yeah.
When I moved up here, it took me forever to to actually feel like there wasn't something, if I'm going like kayaking or something like that, like they didn't want to eat me in a lake or a river or something like that.
It probably does. It's just not large enough or poisonous or venomous enough to do so.
That's true. Could be like an amoeba or something like that.
Yeah. It actually brings up another question that I have for you and just a story opportunity. Tell us how old you were and about the first time you experienced snow.
Oh, man. I was 28. I was 28 when I first saw snow. And what's funny is, it's not like I hadn't gone places where it snows. I definitely had been places, but it was always when it was warm. Like, it was, especially, I traveled a lot when I worked in motorsports. And so, but when you go to a track, we would go to Canada, we would go to Portland, but it's all in warm months because that's the point. You need it to be. In fact, the coldest races we ever had were in Florida. The coldest race was always the Rolex 24 Hours in Daytona in late January, early February. And it was always nasty and cold and wet and rainy. And that was the worst.
Define nasty and cold.
So, like,
in Florida,
if it's 40s in Florida, you hate everything because it's damp and gross and humid, and it eats right through you. Layers do no good. So it's funny, like here, I'll be in jeans and a t-shirt into the 40s.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like
I wear shorts all year round.
No big deal. Florida is like there's just a really fast tipping point. It's like, ew, it's hot. Oh God, it's super cold and I want to die. Like, but yeah. So I was going to Washington D.C. With a group of folks from the University of South Florida. And we were actually, they were going to speak with like representatives and stuff of Congress about certain environmental issues. And went up there, I think flew into Baltimore and then drove up, if I'm not mistaken, and it snowed like 10 inches. And it was the first time I had ever seen it. It was like, oh gosh, and I'm driving in it and stuff, like driving our rental car through. I loved it though. I thought it was great. It didn't bother me at all, and I just thought it was super cool. I think we stayed in like the Annapolis area, like for those few days or whatever. But yeah, I love snow, and now I like Seattle because most of the time, last year was kind of crazy, but most of the time we get a few days of snow. It's cool. It looks pretty and it goes away. Yep. It's none of this shovel my way to work bull crap.
No, if it snows, we shut down.
Yeah, the northeast.
Too many damn hills.
Yeah. So no, I like that, and I like that I can drive in an hour and go see really cool snow.
That's a good point.
Into
the mountains are close.
So if I want to see it, you can go to Crystal Mountain or Rainier or Leavenworth or whatever. So yeah.
28. What year was that? Actually, no. How old were you when we met? We'll just do that so people have to do math to figure out how old you are.
Yeah. Well, we met in
Halo
person
Fest
in 2011.
Yes.
So I was 30.
Okay, so it was just a couple of years before.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
That's always wild to me. I was trying to explain it to Emily, and
I
was like, "Yeah, Jeff was not. It wasn't that long ago that
born in 81." So
okay, you just told everybody flat out. That's all right. Whatever. I was trying to help you hide it. Should you wanted to do that?
Yeah, there's no hope.
All right, so you're the oldest of the siblings.
Yeah.
But I love that you guys have a unique naming convention.
That's true.
The Grimm. So where did the name Grimm come from, and how does everybody reflect their Grimm status?
What's funny is it's like it really was just kind of like more happenstance. If you grow up and you're in a big family and everybody, it's a thing, especially if you have 4 boys. And, everyone's like, oh, you guys must get into a bunch of mischief and trouble. And, you guys are like, like the Brothers Grimm. Like they always try to attach some sort of kind of like label to you, basically. It's kind of like the modern day, where like if you see a clique of girls in high school and you said like, oh, like Mean Girls. And, like it would be like that. And so we then eventually just kind of used that and appropriated it for when we were actually doing gamer tags for Xbox Live. And
is that how it started?
Yep. My brothers and I, the 2 oldest of us, we had, I think, different ones. And then brothers 3 and 4 were going to get Xbox Live finally for the first time. And so they're going to have a shared account. Mm-hmm. So they're, well, what can we do that like is for the both of us? And so they're like, well, we all came up with, so why don't you guys be the Grimm Brothers? Their original gamer tag was the Grimm Brothers or Grimm Brothers TM, which looks like Grimm Brothers trademark. Mm-hmm. So it's neat looking, but it's actually stood for Trevor and Matt.
Yeah.
And then eventually they got their own gamer tags. And so when they split, we all decided, well, we'll all do it. And so we went in order, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have labels. don't know if we can see it.
But yours is different, right? Yours is...
Well, mine's spelled.
Yeah, yours is O-N-E.
Yes, because I am a jerk and I wanted to spell the number. And also I'm a writer, too. So it's like, to me, having a word versus a digit.
I'm sorry, is Luke not a writer?
Well, but Luke was, when he started out, he was focusing more like on the actual playing and the athletics. So Luke has the digit 2, which we can see more like on a jersey.
Trevor.
And then Trevor and Matt both are really big into like fantasy, high fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings, things like that. So they actually have 3 and 4 in Roman numerals, which is a little bit more of just kind of a fantasy / classical literary way to put it.
So with, being called the Grimm Brothers, and then Rosie comes along.
Yeah.
What do you do for her?
Grimm sister.
She's Grimm sister. Let's see, it fits. It's easy. Yes. Done.
Yeah.
And your father?
He's Grimm Prime. Yeah, Grimm Prime, and then I think Grimm Mimi is usually what my mom. So that's
okay. I had never.
Yeah,
heard that one. Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah. So it's good. And my daughter, who is gonna be in her 20s.
Damn you! I was about to get to that next.
Sorry.
But no, this fits. This fits. So tell us about the daughter.
So my daughter, Morgan, who is an awesome human being, and being a young dad. And we talked a little bit about your journey, kind of like with your son. It's interesting now for me, like, not being on the other side of the journey, just being farther along in it. And it's really cool now with her being an adult. Mm-hmm. And so that relationship dynamic changes. We just went together to the,
she doesn't change. Yeah. She still says something about somebody. I'm like, that shit's not going to last.
But we just went to the Alabama-Michigan game and together. And it was just really cool to just go the two of us and hang out and chat about life and things like that. And I'm always super, super proud of her. And she actually has a tattoo like this on the back of her neck that says 1.1, which is super cool.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really neat. So it's funny. It has become something that's just again, it's really a family appropriation thing. Like, our last name wasn't Grimm or anything like that. It was just kind of like people thought it was funny, and then we're like, okay, well, I guess we'll make it funny.
That's good. So you had Morgan young, you said? How old were you?
Yeah, I was 19.
You were 19.
Yep.
How did that rock your world? Or did it at all?
So, well, what's funny is it kind of almost seemed like it didn't seem out of the ordinary because my parents were super young. Yeah. So, I grew up when I was 10, my mom was 27. That's insane.
I mean, when I was 10, my mom was 30.
And so, so it didn't seem weird necessarily. It just comes with the natural challenges. Mm-hmm. And so I had to fight those battles and be young and dumb and not know how to, manage money really well and not know how to, so it's funny. My daughter told me a story a couple years ago or something that she went to an AmScot, which is if you don't know, it's like a payday lending.
Oh, okay.
Cash
Dollar
advance.
Tree.
Yeah, cash advance kind of place. And I used to have to go there quite a bit.
I've been through those. I've been through those.
And she went there to cash a check with a friend of hers, and she suddenly realized what the place was for. And she all of a sudden got really emotional, thinking.
What do you mean? What the place is for?
So most of the time, people are in there because they're borrowing money ahead because they just
robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yes, and so she just always saw it as the place that gave her free Tootsie Rolls. So in her mind, she was just like, "Oh, you're going on another errand with Dad. It doesn't matter what it is. You're going to the bank or the grocery store or wherever DMV. Who cares? Yep. I'm just sitting here, and." It struck her then. She was late teens or early adult. This happened, I think it was a couple of years ago. And she was and I kind of just thought about what is it like? And that was a really interesting moment for us, for her to kind of understand some of the, the sacrifice and struggle that comes along with that. And it was a neat opportunity for me to also be able to kind of remind her that it's always worth it and to have a tangible kind of display of this was tough. And you know what? I'd do it all over again in an absolute heartbeat, which is neat. It's not that growing up in an affluent situation is bad by any means, but in a lot of ways, I'm thankful for the lessons that were kind of afforded to me through that process in a way. And she and I have a super unique relationship that if I had kids now or had kids, whatever, like it would always be different. It would be something that's really, really unique, I think, and specific to her, which is really awesome.
Is there anything that has happened in your life with your daughter that made you look back to your parents and go, shit, my bad. I get it.
Oh,
I get
man.
it.
I mean, stuff all the time. I think a lot of it was just, making sure you always had a job, making sure that you, like, it's kind of like, and it's hard to almost sometimes not feel guilty about something that's totally not your fault. Like, it's not my fault that my parents were young, and not my fault that, like, my dad, for example, probably turned down other adventures and riskier choices to do something that was like, my dad's gonna, go to college and he's gonna work at a meat packing plant, and I was like, that's not like fun stuff, but he's doing that to like make those sacrifices. And I think that having those moments as well, it's like, oh, I could do this other thing. And it's easy on the outside looking in to be like, oh, that's a shame you had to turn X down to go with Y. But you never think that in the moment.
You're correct.
Like,
yeah.
It's like, oh, I never thought it was bad. And so it gave me such an appreciation for, like, my parents being like, oh, it's no wonder you still just seemed so happy all the time. Everyone else kind of looked at outside and in and be like, oh, that's tough. But it's awesome to be, like, in the midst of it and feel like, oh, that's why they were so happy,
I've had those clicks. Like,
yeah. And I mean, and we were raised too in like, we were always like really close as a family, really kind of strong, like faith-based household. And so there was always just more, there was always just something deeper, more foundationally that we all kind of like attached and anchored ourselves to as well. And so I think that definitely helped. And that helps, kind of push you through sometimes when things are tougher and leaner. And again, then you look back on it and it's...
We're going to touch faith in a sec here again, because there was a question, but there's another one I
Okay.
want to ask. They always say that you, or should at least, strive to give your children that piece that you were missing. And for me and Liam, it's always, God, I hated not getting a packed lunch. Like, that was the one thing that I felt like somebody was supposed to do that never once in my entire... Let me make sure that's true.
The fact that you have to think about it, though.
I mean, from when my dad had a girlfriend when I, like, in kindergarten, first grade, I think I got packed lunch. But once I could remember anything really, like second grade, I don't think I ever had a packed lunch. So I love packing Liam's lunch. That's my one thing that I always try to give him.
That's awesome.
Which means when he gets older, he's going to, like, have his kids and be like, man, this motherfucker never let me buy school lunch.
I had barbecue to trade.
So is there anything in your life that you felt was missing? Not negatively missing, but that you strive to provide for Morgan to make it easier for her than it was for you?
Oh, man. You know what? I think in some ways, and again, this always comes back to more guilt on my end. Like, I was like, my mom finally last year, she graduated college. She went back to school after 25 years of homeschooling us.
Yeah.
And she went back and got her degree, and I was super, super proud because I was like, oh, you went back. And so sometimes, like, for my dad, I'm like, man, like, I wish you would have just had the ability to take, different risks and stuff like that. And so I think in some ways, even taking, like, the job that I did out here and moving across the country, I wanted to kind of do that in some ways to show, like, my daughter too, like, hey, like, push yourself. And sometimes, like, you balance basically, the decisions that you make. And I kind of did that decision both ways because I kind of also wanted to reward the sacrifices that my parents did. I kind of wanted to be like, you know what, like, I can just do kind of like the safe thing and just make ends meet. But at the same time, they sacrificed so much so that we could do more and set ourselves up, that I felt like, it's like the parable of the talents. It's like, what do you do with what you have been given to you, like, invest?
That's a good point.
And so that was kind of an interesting, in all honesty, like, middle point that to me connected being a parent and being a kid of parents that had, sacrificed a lot.
Okay. So this next one, this is where we get deeper, because this is always fun for me.
Okay.
you talked about a faith-based household, but you also have a very Florida-based household. With that comes very Florida beliefs. And I've always loved the discussions that we've had because no topic has been taboo.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about what it's like going from an area like Florida, which is a lot like Texas, and that, you have your faith in your household and that's it. And, we have the gun control debates or the abortion debates and what it's like to move literally to the opposite corner of the country that is a very different belief set and surround yourself with a bunch of different beliefs. How does that shake and challenge your faith and your beliefs? And because you're in such a PR-focused job that has you doing the song and dance of how do I answer a question without answering a question, but give an opinion without giving an opinion, how do you balance all that, especially when the beliefs are so strong? Usually, so I think you and I, we kind of stay in the middle. We see both ends. Gun control is one of my favorites. I love your dad's stuff about good guy with a gun. I'm like, I don't really believe, but I'm not against it. But I always like watching you because you're usually the first comment that is so diffusing. Yeah. So I'm curious, how the hell do you balance that?
What's funny is, that part is not really a song and dance. I mean, that is just me naturally too. Okay. I think a lot of it is I have such an appreciation for diversity of perspective. And I think it's really important on both ends. One thing that the internet, I think, kind of strips from us a lot of times is intentionality. Yeah. And it's easy for me, like somebody else might see a post that a family member makes that's a more conservative slant or a classically conservative thing. And it's real easy to jump, and be upset. Well, obviously, you say this because you, A, don't care about XYZ, or B, you obviously think this. Whereas I'm looking at it and I'm like, no, I absolutely understand the intentions behind why they feel a certain way. I mean, we were raised in a around firearms and to use that as an example, in a very really respectful and like a very like responsible ownership. We weren't allowed to point toy guns at each other because it was driven into us that like, hey, these things are weapons, tools, but you have to have the responsibility about them and respect. This is not something you play around with, and so I always really, really appreciated that. So to me, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I absolutely see where you're coming from, but it's equally important then to look at people who have had other experiences. Maybe there are people who either never grew up around that, or maybe they had tragedies that involved that, and that's going to color what they think and feel. And so, regardless of the topic, I think that's what I try to do.
Look, that's just a good life lesson. I say this to Emily all the time. I'm like, the easiest way to get what you want in life is to understand both sides of the argument and to know what one intention is and the other
is like the unsung hero.
You don't have to be sympathetic. But to be empathetic goes a freaking mile and a half.
It's just like when you can just kind of try to put yourself in like someone else's shoes in a way. I mean, even the whole idea behind like our faith from a Christian perspective is that like you have someone like Christ who is the literal embodiment of walking the miles in someone else's shoes. It's like, it's a God thing, but it's also a humanity thing. And so I think that's what we are charged with doing, is taking our perspectives, but also, placing that in the perspectives of others. And I mean, I get it wrong all the time.
No one's perfect.
And I can, there it is. I think it's funny. You're the first one to say that. It's usually, my wife makes fun of me for saying that all the time, rather predictably. But yeah, I mean, my faith is something that's super, super important to me and drives and is the foundation of a lot of different things. And I guess I don't worry about it because like, my parents raised us to be really questioning about things and to be like skeptical about stuff and to put things to the test kind of. And it's evolved some.
It's almost why, I almost feel like it's why you ended up with a career in like science. Yeah. And working at Moseley, which we talked about on another episode. But I had a fun conversation with my mom about this. And how do you think your understanding of science and the world's understanding of science that goes on changes a faith? And what I mean more so is, God, I talked to my mom about the Big Bang Theory and Genesis in the Bible and how they pretty much say the same thing, just depending on, one's the answer to how and the other's the answer to why. But how do you do that when so much of faith is from a book written thousands of years ago?
So I think one of the big keys about like maybe the Bible, maybe just a lot of things is it's not about you. Like, meaning it's that to me is kind of the underlying, most issues with society come from self-intent. I want to make myself the most important thing, and therefore everything needs to kind of reflect that. And I'm super guilty of that.
That's why we have a podcast.
All the time, yes. Yeah, but I think the nature is like that it isn't necessarily about you. It's real easy for us to think that certain things are unfair in the world or whatever. When you say, it's like a kid being like, well, that's not fair. He got a bigger candy bar. It's just like, there's such a, again, it's perspective. And we could do an entire episode even on this type of thing where like, if you go at it, again, it's intention. If I go at it exploring science, I just want to know truth. So I'm excited to find out whatever that is.
Okay.
And science to me, also people conflate, I think, science with it's just its own belief or religion, which is not. Science is just a method. It's just a tool to go about figuring things out. And so when you apply that to stuff, like the Bible describes creation as happening in 6 days. I mean, science kind of shows, in my opinion, that it took a gazillion years to do. So,
well, you know what's fun to say? What is the definition of a day to a being that is far beyond our comprehension?
Yeah, exactly.
I said that to my mom. She went,
yeah. Well, and it's funny. So, like, to me, it's like in science, your job isn't to think about those things. Your job is to look at the evidence. So if the evidence says, well, this takes 13 billion years to form, sweet. And in my mind, I'm like, well, if God made everything and he decided to just snap his fingers and do it, let's assume that those capabilities are possible. Well, then that's just what happened. Okay. And it doesn't bother me either way. It changes nothing.
I also like to say, like, Mom, how does an adult talk to a child?
Yeah.
If he has the understanding, let me just say days.
Yeah. And I think that people will hear that and they'll be like, well, that's demeaning. And but again, that's making it about yourself again. That's getting mad because, constantly, I think there's a reason why the Bible uses the father-son to the parent-child analogy a lot in that is because there are things, when you're just at a different point, you use things to explain, things in different ways. It's just a different spot in the universal hierarchy, I think. And again, that's what I believe.
It's life.
And if other people believe other things, I'm super supportive of that. Okay. I am adamant, to kind of like fight for folks to find that truth for themselves. Because if it's shoehorned and if it's forced upon you, I don't think it means as much.
Makes sense. All right. Lightning round time.
Yeah.
One word answers. Coke or Pepsi?
Pepsi.
Wow. Would have thought Coke there, definitely from being in this house. McDonald's or Burger King?
McDonald's.
Pizza Hut or Domino's?
Pizza Hut.
Best toppings on a burger?
Barbecue sauce, some sort of like mozzarella or provolone, grilled mushrooms.
Favorite type of cheese? And favorite type of bread? Let's
fresh buffalo mozzarella. Favorite type of bread? Maybe like a focaccia bread or something.
Okay. Barbecue or classic wings?
Classic wings.
Wow, classic wings.
Yeah.
So you go barbecue sauce on a burger, classic wings.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite candy bar?
Score or zero.
I haven't heard those in so long. Pineapple on pizza?
No.
Okay. Just making sure.
I'll give it all to my wife. She likes pineapple on pizza.
There we go.
It's okay.
All right. Well, Jeff, we made it through episode 6.
Yeah.
Thank you much for letting me grill you on
It's true.
so many things that I didn't get to either, but we have more
I know.
episodes.
Yeah, we didn't even talk. Yeah. There's a bunch. It'll come up.
Yep. So that's it for us. Another episode next week. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. No idea what the topic's going to be yet, but we'll figure that out in like the next 30 seconds.
Sounds good.
All right, y'all.